good morning. You can imagine that it's really a great honor and a great pleasure to be here today. And I thank the Honorable Kevin Rudd, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, to be here present today. It's really a great occasion. Of course, all the authorities here representative of this university to host this. It's interesting how you call it a breakfast meeting. So I thank you very much for this idea. Distinguished guests and the Honourable Ambassador from Portugal who came on purpose. He's a good friend and I really was very happy that he came. Ladies and gentlemen, I am grateful to the Honourable Kevin Rudd for making time from his schedule to convene this gathering with the university, which is really a great opportunity to share with you a number of thoughts on the Alliance of Civilizations, a United Nations initiative that I am proud to lead. I am indeed most thrilled to be in Australia. It's, by the way, the fourth time in my counting, a fundamental member of the Alliance in which you can play an important role because of your unique model of multiculturalism, which His Excellency the Minister developed in a marvelous way. I am here precisely to explore further how to develop closer cooperation with this country, to learn more about this vibrant society and how it is coping with the huge challenges of managing cultural diversity in our global age of insecurity and change. Let me praise, I'm not the type of person who praises all the time. I do it here now sincerely. Let me praise your efforts and your achievements as a cultural diverse society and as a multicultural democracy. I know that sometimes we lack distance to view our problems in the proper perspective, so that we tend to focus on failures and to amplify the magnitude of our shortcomings. But both as an insider in these kinds of issues, which are at the core of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, and shall we say, with an outsider's eye on your society, I can assure that you are so many things that you can share with others. Example, best practices, policies implemented, and indeed your vision of multiculturalism. I know quite well that this word multiculturalism has no agreed meaning, and that in other parts of the world, notably in Europe, it polarizes the debates and produces rather a noxious effect. But one should not be afraid of using words when they stand for strong convictions, principles, and values, and when they spell out a vision, a strategy, and an agenda of success story over so many decades, as is the case of multiculturalism in this country of Australia. Your Excellencies, in our globalized times, all countries are facing cultural challenges in changing conditions and new trends in societies. We cannot ignore that new dividing lines are emerging, creating a breeding ground for all kinds of extremisms and anti-migration populism, sometimes mixed with anti-Islam population and populism. But this means, in fact, two things. One, increasing popular concerns over culture, migration, and identity are a wake-up call and a reminder of a crisis of trust in the system that really has to be restored. Two, multiculturalism in many cases has to be revisited by acknowledging its pitfalls, but also its immense strengths and making it capable of responding to the new challenges ahead. Revisiting multiculturalism might lead to delineate a new progressive form of multiculturalism that basically prevents throwing the baby out with the bathwater. By a progressive form of multiculturalism, I mean, in fact, two things. On the one hand, spelling out multiculturalism as a two-way street with no barriers between minorities and the majority population, and where the cultural needs of the mainstream matter as much as respect for the cultures of individuals belonging to minorities. And on the other hand, to focus on cultures and identities as a dynamic, open, and inclusive process that provides individuals with a sense of belonging. I always insist on this. Provides individuals with a sense of belonging, community, and collective mission. Democracies of the 21st century have to elaborate further on how to deal with cultural diversity and how public policies should respond to it. A kind of cultural pluralism based on the core concept of citizens as equals in the public sphere is needed to play down the politics of differences that will only lead to social fragmentation and exclusion. At the same time, attention has also to be refocused on cultural symbols and a vibrant state-building narrative, because all individuals have to be provided with a sense of belonging, community, and collective mission that stimulates self-esteem and autonomy in order to progress as individuals within social structures. Indeed, all societies are different. Answers have to be locally rooted, and there is no ready-made way out or an all-in-one solution. But as we live in one world under the same roof, some global thinking is needed to devise a common vision for living together, to find shared strategies and develop new tools and new policies. This is all about the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Alliance is a 5-year-old initiative of the United Nations that is mainly focused on promoting a culture of respect, tolerance, dialogue and peace based on universal human rights and human dignity. The Alliance stands for the fourth pillar of sustainable development, promoting good governance or democratic governance of cultural diversity, intercultural dialogue, understanding and trust within and among societies. After all, it brings forth a new agenda for living together, covering 4 main fields of action, as His Excellency has mentioned, in other words, education, youth, media, and migration. In our somehow polarized world, the Alliance gives special attention to improving relations between the so-called Western and Muslim societies by deconstructing prejudices, misconceptions, and stereotypes that fuel fears, feed hostility, ignite tensions, and spark violence. By promoting education for valuing cultural diversity and learning how to live together with our differences and our communalities. As a new United Nations soft power tool, the Alliance plays an advocacy role to raise global public awareness about present cultural challenges and the need to provide people with a modern sense of belonging, community, and collective mission. It tries to restore trust and understanding within and among communities by promoting education for cultural diversity. I insist, education for cultural diversity, intercultural dialogue and understanding, and fighting against misconceptions, stereotypes, prejudices, discrimination, racism, and hate speech. It contributes to reinforce human security, peace, and development worldwide. The Alliance relies upon its network of member countries and its wide platform of partners to promote intercultural dialogue and cooperation. It is a results-oriented initiative, but it only acts as a convener, a catalyst, and a broker. These were words of Mr. Kofi Annan. It cannot replace implementation of policy measures by governments and, of course, by other local players. It cannot substitute lawmakers. It cannot act on behalf of any civil society organizations. In this process, dialogue is the tool par excellence to address and, we hope, resolve the objective and subjective differences that cause tensions and conflict. However one defines it, dialogue is a democratic method aimed at resolving problems through mutual understanding and concessions, learning how to disagree, rather than through the unilateral imposition of one side's views and interests. This is why I am more than happy to be here, really, to learn about and get a better sense of what I think really is an outstanding Australian experience in building an inclusive society, in understanding the new challenges you face, because you also face new challenges, in learning about the policies you are implementing. I believe that any successful formula has to reconcile diversity and social cohesion, to combine a modern sense of belonging, community, and collective mission based on a dynamic and inclusive definition of culture and identity, social justice, and also economic efficiency. I also believe that what is at stake are our democratic values, those of freedom, equity, respect for rights and liberties, and tolerance, those of citizenship, justice, and inclusiveness. Changes of the past few decades are challenging these values. But to a certain extent, it is normal because life is dynamic. And each time a wave of migrants, I would add, has its challenges. Each generation expresses some anxiety about the unfamiliar, the new, and the uncertainties brought by change. But fears have to be addressed, myths deconstructed, and trust restored with appropriate action. Australian multiculturalism as a reality of its cultural and ethnic diversity, and as a public governance of this diversity, is, I would say, a great achievement. It's not because I'm here with His Excellency here present and at this prestigious university. I firmly believe it. And I think this experience, this way in which this nation was built, has to be better known. But as it normally happens, it has never been free from tensions, of course, problems and risks, and it was not achieved overnight. And this is something that we always have to note. These things are not achievable overnight. As a work in progress, permanent work in progress, multiculturalism needs to move on and become less defensive and more assertive everywhere. Multiculturalism needs to be reinvigorated through education, welfare, and indeed culture, because after all, it is through culture in a broad perspective, as a way to develop social interaction, trust, and understanding, that people are bound closer together, thrive, and ensure better socio-economic outcomes. As United Nations representative for the Alliance of Civilizations, I am here to learn with you and to invite Australia to bring the Alliance's various platforms of dialogue and cooperation its unique experience and to reflect together with all the others on what has changed and on how multiculturalism can be updated and extended into a new progressive model all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, most of the global challenges of our century can be dealt with by appropriate soft power tools. This applies to the Millennium Development Goals agenda. This applies to the Millennium Declaration that sets common goals towards peace, security, justice, and democratic societies, respect for all human rights and fundamental freedoms, including the right to development, and the promotion in all countries of civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights for all. This applies to climate change, to human security main issues, to democratic transitions and social transformation in the MENA region. This applies even to almost all protracted conflicts that poison our living together in one world, notably the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So it is time to invest more soft power tools. It is time to refocus the international agenda on achieving results that meet people's concerns, that contribute to build a better future for all. This is why, as it has been mentioned, our annual forum, which this year takes place in Qatar on December 11 to 13, will focus on the missing link between culture, development, and peace. We want to achieve better integration between the Alliance's goals and the development agenda. We hope that the Doha Forum will be a turning point in removing and renewing local, national, and global commitment to the Alliance's mission and goals. Let me conclude by expressing my hope that, and I'm not only hope, I'm sure, that Australia will play a leading role in this renewal. Thank you very much for your attention.